Welcome to Retail Retold, the stories behind how that store landed in your neighborhood. I'm Chris Ressa, in conversation with the people and stories shaping retail and real estate. Brought to you by DLC. Welcome to Retail Retold, everyone. Today I'm joined by Kal Gullipali. Kal is a multi-brand, multi-unit franchisee. I'm excited for him to be here. Welcome to the show, Kal.
Hey, hey, Chris, thanks for having me.
So, Kal, so my team will be happy. There we go. Kal, tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm like you said, a multi-unit, multi-brand franchisee. We actively run in 4 different states, so South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and a small interest in Tennessee. We're in food brands and non-food brands. And so we have a shared office that supports all the brands that we're in, and we're right now in hyper growth mode.
Awesome. And how many units do you have open?
So we have over 100 units. Some of that includes some legacy portfolios that we still have a piece of, but um, right now our holdings are on the food side are Marco's Pizza, Dave's Hot Chicken, and Pop Up Bagel, and on the non-food side we're in a bunch of health and wellness categories, but European Wax Center, Restore Hyper Wellness, Hand and Stone Massage, VO Med Spa, and Sandbox VR, which is kind of a virtual reality concept that we just entered, kind of the experiential space.
I'm familiar. Yeah. Uh, so you're a big franchisee. You're not one of the 2 or 3 location groups. Um, how did you get started in deciding you wanted to be in the franchise space?
Yeah, so 2016, we joined a concept called Orange Theory Fitness. We opened our first 2 locations in 2017. That's after doing a lot of research in the franchise industry and trying to figure out what our first brand would be. And we chose Orange Theory, one, because I was a member, but then number 2, kind of learn the economics and how you could actually make a great return deploying capital into franchises. And so we opened 2 in 2017, and we started growing our portfolio since that year.
What did you do before 2016?
So out of college, I moved to Manhattan, worked at Merrill Lynch for about 6 or 7 years. Then a independent hedge fund for a couple of years after that, and didn't jump into franchising just yet. Actually went to independent businesses. So, I actually bought a local butcher shop and a couple of them in Long Island. Then an independent pizzeria, created a burger joint, all non-franchises, and then again took the leap in 2016 into Orange Theory.
So, do you still own those butcher shop and the burger joint?
No, we sold all of them in and around the time that we jumped into Orange Theory, and we still own all the franchises except for Orange Theory. That's the one that we've sold 100% of, and that was back in 2019, pre-COVID.
Okay. So the timing was pretty good for that little downturn for the Orange Theory because of the gym. It was tough to get to the gym. They've come back obviously, but that was interesting timing. And so you jump into the franchise space in 2017. You've had some explosive growth. You've gone from 2 in 2017 to 100 today. How did that happen? That takes capital, that takes expertise, that takes getting vetted by franchises, that takes either finding locations or buying other groups out. Was there any point in time that was like a huge catalyst for you that really exploded your growth?
Yeah, when we were purchased, this is back in 2019 when we were selling our Orange Theories and purchased. What I noticed was the team that bought us owned over 100 Orange Theories, and so that kind of gave me the inspiration that it was possible to create this, mega franchisee. And by the way, I would say we're kind of on the medium side. We're not even that large. There are folks that own 1,000, right? So I would
Sure.
consider them large. But that moment gave me the inspiration that, hey, it's possible, and why not our company? And so I started learning about how do you scale a franchise. But what's neat about the franchising industry is there's a lot of capital that comes in both on the equity and debt side, right? There's a lot of banks that, focus on franchise financing. And then on the equity side, there's a lot of, family offices and high net worth individuals that are looking for kind of this asset class. It's turned into an asset class. And so people want exposure to it.
Well, and now the equity side's even more, right? The institutional private equity is getting into, has come into the space in a big way. And so it's not just family office and high net worth anymore. Private, right? The private equity groups have come in a big way to the franchise space. So when you sold out to Orange Theory, well, now you sold your burger joint, your butcher shop. You sell Orange Theory. You don't have any businesses anymore. Probably sitting on some capital. And what happens next?
So actually in 2018, while we were owning the Orange Theories, I jumped into a European wax center concept, and that we bought four locations in Boston, turned them around relatively quickly, and then started expanding that portfolio. So we actually had a 2 brand portfolio in 2018 through 2020. And then kind of post COVID is when we really started growing. And that's when I took the 4 units and grew it to a 50 unit portfolio.
And so do you have 50 units in European wax today?
Yeah, I have about 52. I sold about 90% of that whole portfolio. And so, I own about 10% of the pro forma company, but, and I'm also kind of, I'd say, not so active anymore, but, not now I focus on the brands, that we are, mostly in the Southeast now.
And so you sold 90% of your interest in European wax and you moved to Marco's Pizza. What drove you to that brand?
COVID really hurt, um, I would say health, wellness, and beauty. We had to essentially shut down, and there's a long runway to reopen. So I wanted at that point, I learned, yeah, back to the kind of finance days. Hey, we need to have a diversified portfolio. Why not apply that same concept in franchising? And so in 2020, really just listening to public company conference calls, we had all the time in the world at home. Uh, we learned that, hey, what was the beneficiary of COVID? And that was really delivery pickup concepts, right? And who was set up to deliver in a during COVID world, and that was pizza, and even the Chipotle's of the world, which are not franchises, but we were really looking for those concepts that could capture some momentum. And that was pizza, and that's why we jumped into Marcos. Marcos presented that opportunity that was kind of the up and coming player, great quality product, but also had the most runway for growth. Right at that point, I think they only had 1,000 units. Now they have about 12, 1,300, and there's still a lot of runway in the brand in the future.
Got it. And so how many did you take on right away? You sold the 90% European wax. How many Marcos did you take on?
So the initial acquisition was 17 stores in and around Columbia, South Carolina. I mean, we bought a few in Myrtle Beach as well, but it's one package of 17. And that kind of catapulted, our, that food portfolio, um, to get us incubated and then really start our growth path into the brands that we're in now.
So now the I think we'll get into the following now, which is you've made a ton of runway and growth through acquisition and disposition of businesses. How how much of the growth is organic? Like you go out, you find a location, and you start the brand from day one, and a franchise brand. You start that location from day one, and you sign the lease, you open it up, and you start firing pizzas out the door, or performing health and wellness treatments on customers.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the brand. So in Marco's, we started it as an acquisition play. And, out of the 54 locations, I would say that we bought 40 of them, but we opened kind of 10 plus, maybe 12. Um, and so it really depends on the brand. And then the two new food brands that were in Dave's Hot Chicken and Pop Up, there really is an acquisition opportunities because they're relatively new brands. So we are focused on de novo, so brand new stores, and really great locations. So in the past acquisitions, and now it's, primarily it's new builds.
So, uh, what drove you to Dave's Hot Chicken? Obviously, that's like the hottest QSR brand right now, or one of the hottest QSR brands. The AUVs are very different than the other brands you were a part of before, right? Like the AUVs of Dave's Hot Chicken are much larger than a Marco's Pizza or a European Wax or even an Orange Theory. Is that what drove you to that brand?
So I always had this weird appreciation for hot chicken. So that's initially what drove me to the brand. But kind of seeing some of the legacy brands in Nashville create this new concept, or it's been around for a while. But Dave's then took that concept and created a fast casual version of it. And the what initially drew me to Days is, one, the product was great. Number two, they created a really good brand behind it. So the social media behind it, phenomenal. They created, raving fans. People just always talk about Dave's and how much they love it. And I could see the frequency of visits for the core demo is very strong. And then last, but obviously most important is, yes, the AUVs are very strong. So if we're deploying capital to this brand, we're going to get a good payback.
Got it. And so how often are you evaluating different new franchise concepts to see, like, is this something that we should invest in?
Yeah, I would say I'm looking at 1 to 3 brands a week. Um, a lot of we get a lot. I get a lot of inquiries via LinkedIn. I'd say 80% I don't even engage with, maybe 90%. For me, one of the first questions I ask the brand is, "Hey, what's your payback?" Because for me, if you're not having a 3-year payback, I'm probably not going to talk to you. Or, eventually if you get there, because some brands may take a few years to get there, but once you get there, I'm all, my ears are yours.
And so on a 3-year payback, what level of leverage are you willing to put up to get a 3-year payback?
Depends. I mean, it also depends on what kind of equity capital I'm bringing in, right? If like, for example, when we incubated the pop-up bagel development, right, we went all cash. Um, More so because pop-up's a relatively new concept with 15 locations, and we didn't want to go down the path of finding a bank that would kind of take a gamble on it. Not it's not really a big gamble because the brand is doing so well initially, and still to this day. But we didn't want to spend all of our time finding that bank. So, generally speaking, I mean, we're putting up 25 to 35% in every single either acquisition or new build, and then we're putting leverage on top of that.
Got it. Um, and so today it's 100. What is the diversification today in terms of, you mentioned the brands, but give me like some high level numbers of each one.
Um, So, a typical Marcos does about $1 million per location. Days is, around 3 times that. Pop-up's really tough to say at the moment because it's still very new, but you could kind of veer around in or around the Dave's level. But again, only 15 locations, so time will tell. I mean, we committed to the entire state of Florida, so you can kind of tell that I'm very bullish on that brand. Um, when I look at the kind of the non-food brands, I mean, in Hand and Stone, we're doing around $2 million a location. Restore about 1 million. VO, Med Spa. I mean, I think the world of Med Spa, and I think there's tremendous growth in the category and in our brand. So I think, at maturity, we're not at maturity because we're relatively new in the brand, but I think, it wouldn't be crazy to think that a VO Med Spa could do 3 million plus per box. And last but not least, Sandbox. We only have one location, which we opened up on International Drive, but we see that doing 3 million plus.
And that's great. And so what your largest concentration today is, what brand?
Marcos, and then our legacy European wax center position.
And in your office, and you're based in, where are you based?
So we have a headquarters in Columbia, South Carolina, and then we're building a headquarters here in Tampa. So we're kind of a two headquarters company.
And based on what you do now versus when you had the butcher shop, how much, or Orange Theory, how much of your day to day is in operations and thinking through operations versus like, these large scale, things that you're working on?
Yeah, I would say 40% of my days on, speaking to my brand operator. So each of our food businesses has a brand operator who, I work with directly and, making sure that, we're compliant within the brand and we're working out ways to grow the brand and making sure that they're building out their org chart for growth. So I would say 40% of my time is with them. And then, the other 60% is really with my other team because I don't know if I mentioned that we have a shared office, shared services structure where, I have a finance team and an HR team, a development team, construction team, and my executive assistant who all support all the stores that we have and all the brands we have. So, 40% is there and then 20% is probably to growth, just figuring out, like I said, hey, where should we be positioned for 2026? Should we be deploying capital to our existing brands, which is always a yes? And do we have the capacity to add another brand in the next couple of years? And usually
And
the answer is yes.
of the existing brands, how many organic locations will you open in the next 12 months?
So in the next 12 months, we are on pace to open a minimum of 15 locations and on
Wow.
the high side around 20. So we're growing about 35 to 40 million a year in sales.
Wha Wow. Go get 'em, Cal. All right, man. So, um, one of the things about this show that makes it unique is some deal stories. Is there a location or a deal you worked on that was an interesting deal you worked on, an interesting story that your team worked on that you would share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, Chris, you're in the commercial real estate space, so I mean, you know how hard it is to find some of these premier locations. So we have a really good team. I mean, both on the brand side, so the franchisor provides resources to find great locations. I mean, I have it at Dave's through Ann, and then yeah, at the pop up side through Freddie. Even on the Marco side, everyone has their side on on the real estate and construction side. Then we have our own internal team. But really finding great sites is tough because everyone's like, for example, on days, everyone's going after that, out parcel of 2,500 to 2,800 square foot spot. And there's like 5 LOIs for every single location. So what was interesting in Greenville, South Carolina, just because of a relationship, not that I had, but that corporate had, they knew that a really big developer named Realty Link down in Greenville. And, they kind of carved out an out parcel for us and did a build to suit. And, that location's our best location in Dave's. And we found it only because, again, not because of me, but because Dave's has this great relationship with regional developers across the nation. And they put the deal together and I signed it. So didn't really do much work on my side, but I'm so grateful that, these relationships exist.
Yeah. Uh, I think, the lesson there in business is right that it's all about relationships still in an AI driven world. We still need relationships to make deals happen. And that's a interesting example right there. Um, I wish I was the developer in that scenario, but I'll call Dan in and tell him save it for me next time. Uh,
Yeah.
so you spend a lot of time thinking, reviewing, looking in the franchise space. To end this on a note, what is one trend? And I didn't ask you this question earlier, so this is but I hope I don't throw you off too much. What is one franchise trend that doesn't get talked about that you see coming?
I think back, so I think what happened during COVID is service has kind of went away. And you know, people are so focused on, say the drive-through by the way, Chick-fil-A does an extraordinary job providing service in the drive-through. But, you're starting to see really long wait times in like, some of these other QSR concepts. I mean, the other day I was talking to one of my team members and they're like, hey, Cal, why are you pushing drive times at, less than 6 minutes. And they're like, why not? And they go, well, this ABC QSR is at like 30 minutes. I said, we're built different. I don't care what they do. That's not good for customer service. So I think what you're going to see is customer service is going to come back, and a hyper focus on the guest experience will come back, because I think we lost our ways in a lot of these brands over the last kind of 3 or 4 years.
I love it. And with that, Kal, anything else we didn't talk about that the audience should know that uh, they might find interesting?
No, I mean, I just think that the franchise space has a tremendous amount of legs. I think it's important, like I said, Chris, to have great relationships with real estate developers like yourself and your peers. And I think there's always a way to find some middle ground, even though when you franchisees and developers are scratching their heads on ways to find a deal happen. I think sometimes emails back and forth, lose the intent, and sometimes just getting on old school phone calls work really well.
Certainly do. Well, Kal, this has been great. I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you watching. Hit subscribe. See you in the next one.